Imagine, you are a young police officer. It is your first day at work. First you find out you were only selected to serve in the most prestigious precinct of the entire city because you have a Titanic donut tiara. And after that, you use your massive magnum to disarm a bomb. And that is just the start of your crazy adventures in the most men-loving police unit in the world. Polidog Patrol, let's go! First, I would like to address the question that is floating around right about now. Orco, why do you play Japanese jerk-off games with gay furries? Well, let me tell you. The reason might shock you, the reason might surprise you, the reason might offend you even. So listen closely and very well to what I have to say, because this is very, very important. It's because I freaking can. Now that we have that out of the way, let's talk about today's subject, Polidog Patrol. The dev Untendo, who also goes by the name Kachimaru, has so far developed 2 games. At least, I'm aware of 2. One is Banky Wars, a shoot 'em up with visual novel components. I haven't played it, but it seemingly, just like Polidog Patrol, is well received within certain circles. And with certain circles I mostly mean the furry, bara and gay community. Because this game is incredible gay, very furry and much bara. Polidog Patrol itself seems to be inspired by action side-scrollers such as River City Ransom in terms of how it plays. But it is also unabashedly an action RPG, and to preface it, I will elaborate more on it later in the video obviously, it is quite successful in most aspects. There are some flaws here and there, but let's go take a look at it. However, first we are going to talk about the story. You play as Shibakuro, a young and sexy police dog who just graduated from the police academy. It is your first real day at work being a police officer and everything. Your way leads you to the most prestigious precinct in the entire city. They called specifically upon you to start working there. So full of energy, you get to your first day at work, and what a day it will be. First you're greeted by your new colleagues. A cold-snouted corgi called Corgino, who is also your superior. The mega chat Captain Shepherd, a shepherd dog. And last but not least, the dick-obsessed boar Fugo Fuga. You also meet some other members of the police later. The impatient and eager Tiger Bolt, the constantly horny Detective Nug, I have no clue what dog race he's supposed to be, and the quiet SWAT Captain Huskibe, a husky. And now let's play a game. Who's the power button? A. Fugo Fuga. B. Corgino. Or C. Huskibe. Leave a comment of who do you think the power bottom is below the video. Thank you. You find out fairly quickly that Shibakuro has been summoned to the precinct, not because he is a good police officer and had great scores at the police academy, but rather because his Smith & Wesson has a particularly large caliber. And that is extremely important for police work, or so they tell you. Your first task is then to get your superior officer Corgino coffee, which surprises me. I thought it had more to do with polishing the gun in his pants. But yeah, it's coffee. But duty calls, a shepherd sends you off to a park where strange things have been happening. Shibakuro and Corgino go to inspect, just to find a flashlight bomb. And the shutoff is being in the back of the device. I will let play out what happens next uninterrupted. You need to see to believe this. So Shibakuro whips out his massive dong and tries to disarm the bomb. My good friend Professor Shades from the University of Rod Tools, Australia will now explain how the process works and everything looks, because I can show it here on YouTube.
Look, you can't be too cautious when defusing a Tenga, whether it be loaded with semen or C4. You gotta approach this with pure caution. That's why I like to wear extra protection. Look, ladies. Now what you want to do is you want to approach the Tenga and make sure that the seal hasn't been broken. If it has been broken, do not consume the liquid into your mouth. It could be cum, might be explosive. Probably cum though. Yep, that's right, she's ticking. So all we gotta do is we just gotta twist it clockwise and...
Thank you, Professor Shades. From this point forward, Shibakuro gets deeply involved in the criminal gangs of Wild City, and it leads him down a rabbit hole of a grand conspiracy theory to end the world as he knows it. From here on out, I'm talking spoilers. You have been warned. Timestamp when it's safe again is on the screen.
3, 2, 1.
As you go against the gangs of Wild City, things are escalating quickly. You go from flashlight bombs in parks to a hostage situation at the Wild Academy to secret underground laboratories and mercenaries that secretly rule Wild City. The story boils down to this. Someone, I will not directly spoil who it is, wants to make the citizens of Wild City feral again. They want to awaken their beast heart. It is an interesting plot point that I would have loved to see more explored within the universe, as the setup is basically that everyone has a wild side inside of them. Civilians started to suppress it, so there is peace within Wild City, but there is a minority that wants to be set free and live their life on the wild side without any inhibitors. And I somewhat can see that point. I just wish this desire would have been explored more. There is a decision around halfway through the game, but it doesn't affect the gameplay all that much. Other than that, the plot is extremely straightforward and does not really stray away too much from it. There is some padding, but in a bearable manner, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. The one thing I will criticize the story for is the main villain. The motives are never really well explained. I will come to a possible reason later why, and you can, if you think 3 seconds about it and how the game presents itself, guess instantly who the big bad evil is. It's not a terrible reveal by any stretch of the imagination, but also has not the impact the writer wanted it to have. The main cast is well done, despite all of them being a bit of a stereotype. It works, as they all have their little quirks that are lovable. For example, Corgino always stands on a box, really in absolutely everything he's in, to compensate for his height during the VN segments. Shepard has this stern but fatherly presence, and Bold is the eager little brother fucking up time after time. But you still have to love him, of course. Just as Kibe could have profited from a little more screen time, if you will say so, as he comes fairly late into the game and basically has not a lot to do by then, or has a lot of character development, which is a shame, as he is one of the dogs that has a more interesting romance subplot. I think I ended up liking every character in the game except Detective Nug. Fuck Nug, and not in a good kind of way. That stupid, permanently horny fucking cunt. I was surprised that the story wasn't just an afterbirth and a vehicle for porn, and that it had some thought put into it. It's by no means a Shakespearean masterpiece.
Almost Shakespearean in the themes.
In the themes of pounding ass and sucking dick. Where was I? Oh yeah. But it does the job well enough to entertain you for the running time. One of my biggest main gripes with the game, And don't get me wrong, I know all about translation, interpreting, and localization. Is the translation of the game. And this also goes back to the writing I criticized earlier. I don't know who did it, but it was definitely not smoothed over because there are some really weird language oddities that do not sound natural or that aren't properly translated. Things like gay male sex or why would you do such a thing get repeated over and over again with little variation, and it gets tiresome. I wish more care would have gone into this so the text would flow more naturally, because especially in a story-heavy game, this is very important and shouldn't be underestimated. The gameplay is essentially the meatiest part of Polidog Patrol. The porn does actually take a backseat to what the game has to offer in terms of mechanics and depth. I would classify this game as a side-scrolling action RPG akin to something like River City Ransom. You fight and jump through Wild City in a side-scrolling manner. The maps are fairly large and have multiple buildings and layers you can go into. Most of them are made that you cannot uncover everything at once and have to revisit to get everything, like in every good Metroidvania. There's also some Metroidvania aspects to it. The combat is derived also from side-scrolling brawlers. You have your trusty big stick, no, not that big stick, you pervert, and beat the shit out of criminals. Fighting is usually a very chaotic yet also oddly very coordinated endeavor. It looks chaotic, but as long as you concentrate on what you are doing, you should be able to figure out what you need to do to win, and you will figure out what's going on. There's a learning curve to the close combat though. While the game never really spells it out to you, the combat works on a rock, paper, scissors principle. Every attack an opponent can throw at you can be blocked or countered with a counterattack. And once you realize that, the combat becomes even more fun and satisfying. Other than using your nightstick, you also have throwing weapons that range from pebbles over household and construction items to shit. Yeah, literal shit. They are pretty much useful if you face more than 3 enemies to keep them in check. The last weapons you have in your arsenal are guns. They usually do a lot of damage but need time to aim and to make sure you hit the target. And you are also immobile while aiming, so you are vulnerable. The longer you aim, the higher the chances that you hit. It's a good trade-off for something that can end fights otherwise fairly quickly. You also have the ability to upgrade your guns, but they will never get too powerful as the enemies in the late game scale a bit with you. There are multiple ways to level up your character, and one is by just fighting and gathering XP. I never had the feeling that I had to grind all that much or grind at all to be powerful enough to go to the next section. I just played through the story in one go, more or less. I did some side activities here and there, but I was always powerful enough to take on the next enemy. The other way you can level up is through medals. Medals serve as an incentive to complete certain feats. Most of those you will get by just playing the game. I did some side activities here too, but no way all of them, as there's a lot of those, and I just played through the main story. I could unlock most of everything I wanted with the medal I got, except for some later saucy scenes, but nothing safe load couldn't fix. You can also buy exclusive equipment such as guns and armor via the medals, but I only bought the guns because armor you can also buy in regular shops, and the armor the medals offer isn't really anything where I said, yeah, I need that. More importantly, you can also unlock new combat moves, which makes the combat way more fun and engaging than it is at the start. and new traversal options, which you need to proceed at one point, and the game does not tell you about it. So if you're stuck somewhere, then go back and check the moves you can buy. That occurred only once, but it kinda annoyed me. I'm gonna be honest, that annoyed me. Side activities are available, but mostly comprised of some fetch quests. There's some variations sprinkled in here and there, like a shooting gallery, where you have to maneuver an obstacle course and hit targets. Some other side quests play into the gay fantasy, like masturbating in front of a raccoon. And no, I will not explain this any further. Overall, I'd say it is enough variation to get a pass from me. Once you finish the main storyline, there is some post-game content, like a new dungeon and an optional boss. You can also go back and finish side activities you haven't done so far and explore more for secrets and the likes, which I highly recommend, since there's a lot of stuff that you will probably miss on your first playthrough. This was by far the biggest surprise for me. The Hanky Panky takes, at least in the main story, pretty much a complete backseat to everything else. Some cutscenes within the story contain the odd blowjob here and there, and some really gay fantasy in the dialogue. But other than that, you will find none of that in the main story. However, you have the opportunity to get down and dirty with all your colleagues in special romance events. You're going to play Who's Your Husbando and Why Is It Huskibe? Quite a lot. And in those romance sequences is where the hanky panky lies. And I'm going to talk about every romance story a bit more detailed. However, generally saying, it isn't so much a real romance as it is a series of scenarios that fulfill the most prevalent gay fetishes that root in the tropes of each character and what they embody. Nothing wrong with that. I'm personally just sad because there are some legitimate good setups for some good storytelling here, but obviously it's always squandered by fetishism or something that tonally just doesn't work in that moment. I will now talk about the romances a bit more in depth, but I won't spoil anything, so you can listen, so there will be no I think the best storylines come from Shepherd, Bolt, Corgino, and Huskibi, in that order. I didn't care much for Fugo Fuga and Nug, because it's just horny shit that can fuck right off with Nug together, because fuck Nug. Shepherd is probably my favorite storyline. He's a married anthro with 3 kids, but wants to explore himself and takes a liking to Shibakuro. A great setup, but squandered in the end, in my opinion. Bolt's side story is the closest that comes to an actual romance plot. It's pretty good, but also kinda sad at the end. Corrigino has an interesting story that explores his past, but it's also squandered big time at the end. I was exceptionally disappointed at the end of this one, but overall, I ended up still liking it, so what can I do? Also, Corrigino is Husbando for life. Huskibe has the most elusive, but also one of the most intriguing background of all characters. But again, the ending just squanders the potential coming from the setup. I have to say that I don't have issues with what happens, but rather how it happens, or the reasoning why it happens. It's probably one of the most coherent storylines, if you will. I didn't care much for Fugo Fuga, as he's just a less horny version of Nug. And yeah, Nug, talking about him, fuck Nug, fuck this guy. I will never be an alpha chat like him, but still, fuck this asshole, and not in a good kind of way. I fucking hate Nug. I can understand that others might get more out of this than I did, but I legitimately was invested in some of the characters, and for me personally, a payoff in the heart and the loins would have done so much more than just the fab material the game gives you. Overall, if you want to fab to furry baras, You can do that here in spades. Only problem is you have to earn it. The game doesn't give you these scenes for free. You have to actually play the game to get them. And I personally applaud that. Way too many jerk-off games give you the fat material right away. I have a different take. The porn is the icing on the game cake. Let me work for it. Don't give me everything for free, because then I can go and watch a porno and don't need the game. Another thing that you can do, but that is more of a secret, is railing defeated enemies with a little trick that also surprisingly works on both genders. So let's say you want a piece of Mama Hippo's ass over there. You stop her, you frisk her, you beat the shit out of her. I'll just make this short and sweet. The graphics are brimming with life and detail. The streets are constantly full of other anthros and nice background details like dog statues that have huge schlongs and piss. I cannot show that for obvious reasons. Even Nug's little police whistle is animated. No, not that whistle, you pervert. Look at him go. For a game that is made in RPG Maker, it looks and plays impressive. Really does. However, this comes with its own set of issues, and to my biggest point of criticism that I have about the game, even if you follow the instructions it gives you, it runs like a 90-year-old man on a cane. During intense scenes, especially combat, it comes to horrendous slowdowns. You can basically see the engine struggling in real time. It is a small wonder the game doesn't completely break apart. This is probably the worst thing that can happen to you while playing the game, and no, it was not my PC. It should have been able to handle this. The soundscape is pretty good too. The music goes from fun and upbeat to downright creepy if needed. The sound cues hit their mark and everything sounds as it should. Should royalty-free sound effects or music have been used, I haven't noticed it and I won't knock it, because it is the thing most small productions struggle with. There's unfortunately no voice acting, instead the dev opted for dog sound bites with different pitches so you know who is talking essentially. It can get a bit annoying if you are in long dialogues and get that sound cue a lot. And yeah, that's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Well, where do I stand with Polidog Patrol? If you couldn't tell already, I really like the game. Enough that I played it from start to finish. It is one of the most impressive, if not the most impressive game made in RPG Maker MV. The combat hits despite being a chaotic mess, and if you are into gay as fuck bara first, you find that here in absolute spades and will love it. I'm pretty sure. So I highly recommend Polidog Patrol, despite the weird translation and the technical flaws it has, because it is just a good game first and foremost. The porn stuff takes a backseat to everything, and that is okay. And that is why I wanted to make this review, to show and tell you that porn doesn't have to be one note and can actually be in games with deep gameplay that goes beyond the surface level. I don't care for gay bara first at all. I care for good games. It's always been like that and always will be like that. And that's why I rate Polidog Patrol an 8 out of 10 massive magnums. Now go and crank one out. Except Nug. I hope Nug dies of blue balls. That's it. Thank you for watching it till the end. You're awesome. If you enjoyed the content, please like and subscribe. And you can see running through my Patreons. Big shout out to them and to their support, who all make this here possible. I also would like to tell you that you check out all my links in the description. I stream twice a week on YouTube. So far, Thursdays and Fridays. I plan on adding a Saturday into the mix where I do TTRPG, so come by then too. And follow me on social media, Twitter for the most part, because that's where I mostly post updates on the channel. And yeah, thank you all for watching. again, and take care, everyone. Oh, and before I forget, there's a question lingering in the room that I posed earlier. Who's the power bottom? And obviously, it was me all along. I am the power bottom for Detective Knock.